Good morning, class. Please have your reading books out. We're on the best Christmas pageant ever. We're on chapter 3. We're going to take 3 and 4 today. It starts on page 34. There's really no page number there, but if you look to the next one, it's 35. So far, we've been introduced to our main character. We don't know her name yet. Now, her mother just got put in charge of the Christmas pageant, and, well, today we're going to see how she starts getting to work on that. Mrs. Armstrong, who was still trying to run things from her hospital bed, said that the same people always got the same main parts. But it's important to give everyone a chance, she told Mother over the telephone. Let me tell you what I do. Mother sighed and turned off the heat under the pork chops. All right, Helen, she said. When Mrs. Armstrong called Mother at least every other day, and she always calls at supper time. Don't let me interrupt your supper, she always said, and then went right ahead and did anyways, while my father paced up and down the hallway saying things under his breath about Mrs. Armstrong. Here's what I do, Mrs. Armstrong said. I get them all together and tell them about the rehearsals and that they must be on time and pay close attention. Then I tell them the main parts are Mary and Joseph and the wise men and the angel of the Lord. And then I always remind them that there are no small parts, just small actors. Do they understand what that means, Mother asked. Oh, yes, said Mrs. Armstrong. Later, Mother asked me if I knew what that meant about small parts and small actors. I didn't really know. None of us did. It was just something Mrs. Armstrong always said. I guess it means that the short kids have to be in the front row of the angel choir and everybody else can see them. Now, no small parts, just small actors means that everybody has an important job, is what Mrs. Armstrong was trying to get the kids to understand, but they didn't get it. I thought so, Mother said. It didn't mean that at all. It really means that every single person in the pageant is just as important as every other person. That the littlest angel is just as important as Mary, the mother of Jesus. Go and tell that to Alice Wendelkin, I said. And Mother told me not to be so fresh. She didn't get very mad, though, because she knew I was right. You could have a Christmas pageant without any baby angels, but you couldn't have it without Mary. Mrs. Armstrong knew it too. I always start with Mary, she told Mother over the telephone. I tell them that we must choose a Mary carefully because Mary was the mother of Jesus. I know that, Mother said, wanting to get off the telephone and cook the pork chops. Yes, I tell them that our Mary should be a cheerful, happy, little girl who is unselfish and kind to others. Now remember that, because when they find out who Mary is, you're going to think that does not match up this definition. Then I tell them about Joseph, that he was God's choice to be Jesus' father, and our Joseph ought to be a little boy. She went on and got as far as the second wise man, and when Mother said, Helen, I have to go now. There's somebody at the door. Actually, there was somebody at the door. It was my father, standing out on the porch in his coat and hat, leaning on the doorbell. Can you picture this? You got to visualize this. The dad went outside and he starts ringing the door. When Mother let him in, he took off his hat and he bowed to her. Lady, can you give me some supper? I haven't had a square meal in 3 days. Oh, for goodness sake, Mother said, come on in. What will the neighbors think to see you standing out ringing your own doorbell? And why didn't you ring that doorbell 10 minutes ago? In other words, Mom's like, you are acting crazy, and you should have done that sooner so I could get off the phone. Mrs. Armstrong called Mother 2 more times that week to tell her that people could hem up the costumes but not cut them, and tell her not to let the angel choir wear lipstick. And by Sunday, Mother was already sick of the whole thing, and it hadn't even started yet. After church, we all filed into the back 7 pews, along with 2 or 3 Sunday school teachers who were supposed to keep everybody quiet. It was a terrible time to try to keep everybody quiet. All the little kids were tired, and all the big kids were hungry, and all the mothers wanted to go home and cook dinner, and all the fathers wanted to go home and watch the Packers play. Now, this isn't going to take very long, Mother told us. My father had said it better not take very long because he wanted to watch the football game too. He also wanted to eat, he said. He hadn't had a decent meal all week. First, I'm going to tell you about the rehearsal, Mother said. We'll have our rehearsals on Wednesdays at 6:30. We're only going to have 5 rehearsals, so you must all try to be present at every one. What if we get sick? Asked the little kid in the front row. You won't get sick, Mother told him, which was exactly what she told Charlie the morning when Charlie said he didn't want to be a shepherd, and he'd be sick to his stomach if she made him be one. Now, you little children in the cradle room, that's a room in the Sunday school department, and the primary class, you'll be the angels, Mother said. You'll like that, won't you? They all said yes. What else could they say? The older boys and girls will be the shepherds and guests at the inn and members of the choir. Mother was really zipping along, and I thought how mad Mrs. Armstrong would be about all the things that she was leaving out. And we needed Mary and Joseph and 3 wise men and the angel of the Lord. They aren't hard parts, but they're very important parts. So you people must absolutely come to every rehearsal. What if they get sick? It was the same little kid, and it made you wonder what kind of little kid he was to be interested in sickness. They won't get sick either, Mother said, looking a little cross. Now, we all know what kind of person Mary was. She was a quiet and gentle and kind, and a little girl who plays Mary should try to be that kind of person. I know that many of you would like to be Mary in our pageant, but of course we can only have one Mary. So I'll ask for volunteers, and then we'll all decide together the girl that should get the part. That was pretty safe to say, since the only person who ever raised her hand was Alice Wendelkin. But Alice just sat there, chewing on a piece of her hair and looking down at the floor. The only person who raised her hand at this time was Imogen Herdman. Are you thinking she's quiet and nice and kind and gentle? Do you have a question, Imogen? Mother asked. I guess that was the only reason she could think for Imogen to have her hand up. No, Imogen said, I want to be Mary. She looked back over her shoulder, and Ralph wants to be Joseph. Yeah, Ralph said. Mother just stared at them. It was like a detective movie when the nice little old granny, gray-haired lady stuck a gun in the bank window and said, give me all your money. And you couldn't believe it. Mother couldn't believe this. Well, she said after a minute, we want to make sure everyone has a chance. Does anyone else want to volunteer to be Joseph? No one did. No one ever did, especially not Elmer Hopkins. But he couldn't do anything about it because he was the minister's son. One year he didn't volunteer to be Joseph, and neither did anyone else. And afterwards I heard Reverend Hopkins talking to Elmer out in the hallway. You're gonna be Joseph, Reverend Hopkins said. That's it. I don't want to be Joseph, Elmer told him. I'm too big, and I feel dumb up there, and all those little kids give me a pain in the neck. I can remember. I can understand that, Reverend Hopkins said, and I can sympathize. But till somebody else volunteers for Joseph, you're stuck with it. Nobody ever is going to do that, Elmer said. I even offered Grady Baker 50 cents to be Joseph if he wouldn't do it. Offered him 50 cents, and he wouldn't do it. I'm going to have to be Joseph for the rest of my life. Cheer up, Reverend Hopkins told him. Maybe somebody will turn up. I'll bet he, the Reverend, didn't think that somebody would be Ralph Herdman. All right, Mother said, Ralph will be our Joseph. Now, does anybody else want to volunteer to be Mary? Mother looked all around trying to catch somebody's eyes. Anybody's eyes? Janet? Roberta? Alice, don't you want to volunteer this year? No, Alice said, so low that you could hardly hear her. I don't want to. Nobody volunteered to be the wise men either, except for Leroy, Claude, and Ollie Herdman. So there was Mother, stuck with a Christmas pageant full of Herdmans in the main roles. There was no one Herdman left over, and one main role left over. And you didn't have to be very smart to figure out that Gladys was going to be the angel of the Lord. What do I have to do? Gladys wanted to know. The angel of the Lord was the one who brought the good news to the shepherd, Mother said. Right away, the shepherds began to wiggle around in their seats, figuring that any good news that Gladys brought them would come with a smack in the teeth. Charlie's friend, Hobby Carmichael, raised his hand and said, I can't be a shepherd. We're going to Philadelphia. Why didn't you say that before? Mother said. I forgot. Another kid, my mother doesn't want me to be a shepherd. Why not? My mother says, I don't know. She just said, don't be a shepherd. One kid was honest. Gladys Herdman hits too hard, he said. Why, Gladys isn't going to hit anybody, Mother said. What an idea. The angel just visits the shepherds in the field and tells them that Jesus is born. And hits them, said the kid. Of course, he was right. You could just picture Gladys whamming the shepherds left and right, but Mother said that was perfectly ridiculous. I don't want to hear any more about it, she said. No shepherds may quit or get sick, she said before the kid in the front row could even ask. While everyone was leaving, Mother grabbed Alice Wennicott by the arm and said, Alice, why in the world didn't you raise your hand to be married? I don't know, Alice said, looking mad. But I knew. I heard Imogen telling Alice what would happen to her if she dared to volunteer. All the ordinary, everyday Herman things like clonking you on the head and drawing pictures all over your homework paper and putting worms in your coat pocket. I don't care, Alice told her. I don't care what you do. I'm always marrying the Pageant. And next spring, Imogen went on, I'm going to, squinching up her eyes, when the nice little plants called the pussy willows come out, I'm going to stick one down your ear so that nobody can reach it. And it'll sprout there. It'll grow, and you'll spend the rest of your life with this willow bush growing out of your ear. Now, this is a real plant, and it's got a really soft little tip on the tip of it. It almost looks like you would use one of those little cotton tips to clean out the earwax out of your ears. You had to admire her. That was the worst thing any of them had ever thought up to do. And, of course, some people might not think that could happen, but it could. Ollie Herdman did it once. He got this terrible earache at school, and when the nurse looked down his ear with her little light tube, she yelled so loud you could hear her all the way down the hall. He's got something growing in his ear, she hollered. They had taken Ollie to the hospital and put him under, that means to put him to sleep, to dig out the sprouting little willow plant out of his ear. So that was why Alice kept her mouth shut about being married. You know she wouldn't do all those things, she said. I told Alice as we walked home. Yes, she would, Alice said. Herdmans will do anything. But your mother should have told them no. Somebody should put Imogen out of the pageant, and all the rest of them too. They'll do something terrible and ruin the whole thing. I thought she was probably right, and so did a lot of other people. And for 2 or 3 days, all anybody could talk about was the Herdmans being Mary and Joseph and all. Mrs. Homer McCarthy called Mother to say that she had been thinking about it, and if the Herdmans wanted to participate in the Christmas celebration, why didn't they let them hand out programs at the door? We don't have programs for the Christmas pageant, Mother said. Well, maybe we ought to get some printed and put the Herdmans in charge of that. Alice's mother told the ladies' aid that it was sacrilegious to let Imogen Herdman be married. Somebody we never heard of called up Mother on the telephone and said her name was Hazelback, and she lived on Sprawl Hill. And was it true that Imogen Herdman was going to be the mother of Jesus in our church play? Yes, Mother said. Imogen is going to be Mary in our Christmas pageant. And the rest of them too, said the lady. Yes, Ralph is going to be Joseph, and the others are the wise men and the angel of the Lord. You must be crazy, this Miss Hazelbeck told Mother. I live next door to that outfit, with their yelling and screaming, their insane cat, and their garage door going up and down and up all day long. And let me tell you, you're in for a rowdy time. Some people said it wasn't fair for the whole family, who didn't even go to our church, to barge in and take over the pageant. Father said somebody better lock up the Women's Society's silver service. Now, the silver service is fancy forks, knives, and spoons that you would put out at a special meal. My mother just said she'd rather be in the hospital with Mrs. Armstrong. But then the flower committee took a potted geranium to Mrs. Armstrong and told her what was going on. And she nearly fell out of her bed, traction bars and all. I feel personally responsible, she said. What happens, I accept the blame. If I had been up and around and doing my duty, this would have never happened. And that made my mother so mad she couldn't see straight. If she would have been up and around, it wouldn't have happened, Mother said. That woman! She must be surprised that the sun is still coming up every day without her to supervise the sunset. Well, let me tell you. Now, this part always makes me laugh because my mom used to say that all the time. Well, let me tell you. Maybe your mom says things like that too. Don't tell me, my father said. I'm on your side. I just mean that Helen Armstrong is not the only woman alive who can run a Christmas pageant. Up until now, I'd made up my mind to just do the best that I could under the circumstances. But now, she stabbed the meat fork into the pot roast. I'm going to make this the very best Christmas pageant anybody ever saw. And I'm going to do it with the Herdmans, too, after all. They raised their hand and nobody else did. And that's that. Does your mom ever say that, too? And that's that.
And it was, too. For one thing, nobody else wanted to take over the pageant with or without Herdman's. And for another thing, Reverend Hopkins got fed up with all the complaints and told everybody where to get off. Of course, he didn't say, "Go jump in the lake, Mrs. Wendelkin," or anything like that. He just reminded everyone that when Jesus said, "Suffer little children to come unto me," Jesus meant all little children, including the Herdmans. So that shut everybody up, even Alice's mother. And the next Wednesday, we started rehearsals.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Bauer, for finishing up that chapter for us. That was the end of chapter 3. In your folder today, for Tuesday, we have the chapter 3 assignment. If you pull it out, it looks something like this. Start by putting your name at the top. Here comes your quick quiz to see if you're following along and paying attention. Who was the first person to volunteer to be Mary? It was also the only person. Alice, Imogen, Leroy, Beth. Now, Beth's the narrator, but we haven't found that out yet. Why were all the shepherds trying to get out of their parts in the play? Because they wanted to be Joseph instead? Because Imogen had threatened them all? Because Leroy wanted all the shepherd parts to himself? Because Gladys, the angel of the Lord, hits too hard. Oh, I forgot. You should put lines out here so you can put your answers on them. Number 3. Why didn't Alice volunteer to be Mary? Imogen had threatened her. She was tired of being Mary. She wasn't listening when everyone asked. She didn't volunteer because Ralph was named as Joseph. And number 4. Why is Mother suddenly determined to make this the best Christmas pageant ever? Mrs. Armstrong told her it was going to be awful. The Herdmans were afraid they weren't going to do a good job. Everyone in town is complaining about the Herdmans being in the play. The children were very excited about this year's play. Okay, so this one's out. And everyone in town was complaining about it. I kind of like that answer. The Herdmans were afraid that one's out. Mrs. Armstrong told her it was going to be awful. Now, I like both of those answers, and we will accept both of those answers for this one. I think it was a combination of things, but it actually should have been A, but C also played into it. So I'm going to take both answers on that one. All right, save this close because we're going to do chapter 4 in the second video and get the backside. Let's take our vocabulary. Just one, rowdy. The Herdmans were a rowdy bunch. Which one would mean rowdy? We got married left. We got noisy and unruly. We got a church house provided for the minister. We got a natural way of thinking born with. We got discuss. And we got a large wooden feeding trough. Rowdy obviously is C, noisy and unruly. All right, guys. Chapter 3. Check it off your list. Come back for chapter 4.